Do you want your online store to be ultra-fast, fully customized to your needs, and scalable to more than 1 billion items? Imios is an ultra-fast PHP e-commerce framework. Imios, next level e-commerce. Try it now.
If you're running an application at scale in public or private clouds, you have to tame almost boundless complexity. Datadog brings together all this observability data with infrastructure metrics, traces, and logs in one integrated platform.
Vonage is a cloud communication platform that lets you integrate voice, video, and messaging into your applications. We have a load of helper libraries, including a Laravel package and a client library for PHP. You can find out more about us at developer.nexmo.com.
Hello Laracon, I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Nuno and you might have seen this face on Twitter before. I have developed multiple packages for the Laravel ecosystem and for PHP in general, Collision, Laracon, Laravel 0 and more. Today I'm here to present you to another open source project, and this one is called Pest. Pest is an elegant PHP testing framework with focus on simplicity, and it is damn simple. It's based on PHP unit, but gives you a nice API so you can create tests in the elegance that you expect, in the convenience that you would like. I can tell you, I could spend the entire talk telling you how awesome Pest is, but I think I'm gonna do a demo to you. So let's get started. Here I'm going to move to my terminal into my Sublime Text, and I'm going to show you a fresh Laravel application that you might know before. So by default, Laravel ships with PHP unit, which is the standard in testing in PHP. And the way it works is that to create a new test, actually you need a namespace, a class that extends something, and a public function to see your first test. I mean, this is quite the usual, right? The most common PHP developer thinks that in order to have a PHP file, you need to have a class on it, right? And if you run a PHP unit on the terminal, you have a pretty decent feedback. You have here the message that PHP unit was created by Sebastian, of course, but you also have pretty acceptable feedbacks telling you that 2 tests are passing. Now, let me show you how it works in Pest. So first of all, to get started with Pest, the only thing you really have to do is type composer require pest PHP pest, and once you do it, actually Pest is a progressive testing framework. So once you do it, everything will still work. So as you can see here, I still have a success output telling me that those 2 tests are running and they are passing. And this is happening because Pest is a progressive testing framework, means that it works with your current PHP unit test suite. It's built on top of it, so that's why it's working so great. Now, the output is obviously better right here, I think. So it's a little bit more verbose, but it's also nicer on the console. The UX, it's a little bit nicer, right? So let's see, for example, if we have a failure here. I'm going to put fail here, and I'm going to run PHP unit so you can see how it was before. And as you can see, this is the output of PHP unit once you have a failure. And I mean, is again Oops, I don't want to put fail here, I want to put false, right? So let's rerun it. And as you can see here, I have a failure, which is the output in PHP-unit when I have a failure. And this, I mean, it's acceptable, right? It's telling me that, it tells me the file, the class, and why it's failing. I also have here the number of the line. It's quite acceptable, I would say. But if we run with Pest, you have a way better output, really built for humans, actually. So here I know that this test is failing right there, but the test will still proceed, and here I have a pass, and here I have a snippet that tells me exactly which line I failed. And having the snippet directly from the console, I think it's pretty nice. Right? Here I know that one test is failed and one I've passed. So in terms of output, I would say that Pest is a little bit nicer than PHP-unit by default, right? And one thing cool about Pest is that you can use this stop on failure flag if you want it to stop immediately once you found a problem. So here, for example, it tells me that, okay, this basic test has failed, and I'm going to show you to you why he has failed right away. And here you can see as well that one test is pending. So it didn't actually proceed to the second test. It stopped immediately when the stop on failure flag is activated. So pretty nice. Now, besides the different output that Pest provides by default, you also have a different way of writing tests. So we know that it works with the current way of writing tests of PHP-unit, so you can still write classes, that will work. But Pest also offers you a different API of creating tests. And let me show you a little bit how did I come up with that API. So obviously, I was working with JavaScript, and JavaScript have Jest, and Jest offers you some kind of it-describe API of writing tests. But if we take a look closely to the routes file of Laravel, for example, you know that this is the way of creating routes in Laravel. And I found this way very, very elegant. You get this and you give that. So it's, I don't know, I found it very elegant by default this. Imagine if you had to create a class in a namespace that extends whatever just to create your routes file. So it would be a mess, right? And I found this way of creating routes very, very elegant. And I thought, let me try if I can have a tests API that looks similar to this. Very, very elegant. So let's move on again to this unit test. And let's try with Pest having this exactly same test. All right. So the only thing you have to do is really copy the content of the test, remove all of this boilerplate to the beginning, and write test basic, which was the name of our test, pass a closure, you copy paste the test, and you close it here. You run the test in your terminal, and as you can see, it still works in exactly same way. So this test of just 3 lines is the equivalent of the huge test in PHP-unit that you saw just before. Now, we can go a little bit further with Pest. So, for example, here the assert true is actually available globally. So I can remove this variable right here, and this will still work. Pretty nice, right? Obviously, if I have a failure, everything will work as expected. So it's pretty nice. Now, again, we can go even more further using higher order tests. And this is probably my favorite feature in Pest itself. And that means that if you don't pass a closure, you can chain the assertions just after the first method. And this will still work as expected. And take a look. This one line is the equivalent of the test that we saw just before. So yeah, it is damn simple. I really like it. Okay, so this is the high order test in Pest. Let me take a close look to my notes here. Yeah. So one cool thing as well is that when you have this closure here, you can also change some methods right here. And one of them is the skip. So for example, if you want to skip this test because it's failing or whatever, you can just pass this method skip. You run your test suite and Pest will tell you that this test has been skipped. Now you might want to give a reason, and I'm going to tell because Laracon. So Pest will have this nice warning here telling you that this test has been skipped because of Laracon. So I think it's pretty nice. Now, also something is that you might want to run this test with multiple data, all right? So for example, imagine that you are writing validating email service, service that validates emails. So you would write something like validates emails here, and then you would have a service that, for example, service validate email, and you want to work with multiple emails here. You want to make sure that your email validation is working as expected, but with different data, right? So what you can do here is that you can use data providers like you used to do in PHP unit. And that is basically saying, okay, I want to actually test this validation. And here I'm going to just say assert not empty. And I'm going to test this assert not empty with multiple emails. Okay, and the way it works in PHP unit is that you would need to write a data provider for this, like that, and then you would need a function, call it get emails, that would actually return the list of emails that you want to test your test against, right? So this will be like Nuno, and here I would put freak. Now, so this is the way it works in PHP unit, but in Pest we have a more convenient way of doing this, and that is using datasets. In datasets, it's really just this with method that you can say, hey, test this with the list of emails I'm going to provide to you. Okay, and again, you can remove all of this boilerplate. You no longer need it. And I'm going to run my test suite, and hopefully everything works as expected. And there we go. You can see here that my test is passing. It validates emails with Nuno, but it validates emails also with freak. Pretty awesome, right? So just 3 lines again. It's a little bit better than all the boilerplate that you used to need to do a test like this. Now, if you are like me, I like to keep my tests very, very simple. So I would prefer to actually see my dataset in an isolated file, and we can do that with Pest. So I can type, for example, artisan pest dataset emails, and this will create me a new file within datasets here. And I'm going to go there, and let's take a look. So here I have a emails.php, and that emails.php contains a new dataset with the ID emails, and this is the content of my dataset. Keep in mind that I can do lazy loading here, I can do an iterator, I can use yields, so it's pretty nice, right? So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to copy the content of my emails, and I'm going to copy them into this dataset. And once I do this, I can actually now specify just my dataset ID and even share it with other tests if I want to. Now I'm going to run my test suite, and as you can see, it still works as expected. Pretty nice, right? So just 3 lines to write a complex test just like that. Okay, so yeah, so far we have been in this unit folder that works with a PHP unit base class, let's say, right? So far, nothing is kind of related to the framework, to the Laravel framework itself. So let's move on to this feature test. And the difference between the feature tests and the unit tests is that the feature tests actually needs to bootstrap the framework, right? You need the container, you need the database, so it actually bootstraps the framework. So when I come here, I see that, for example, I'm using this get method and asserting a status. So I'm kind of using the framework behind it. Now, to migrate this test into Pest, really, you just have to follow the same rules. So you would copy the content of the test, you would remove all of this boilerplate, and you would write something like, it has a welcome page. Then you pass a closure, and you would close the test here. And now you run your test suite, and everything should work as expected. There you go. Now, obviously, we can do higher order again. So let's, for example, go crazy and chain the get right here. And there we go. I'm going to run my test suite and still works as expected. If I assert that I have a 300, obviously, this will fail. There we go. I do expect 300, but I'm receiving a 200, right? And if I do what Michael Dorinda was saying to me, I can just do assert OK, which is even more elegant, right? Pretty nice. Now, you may have asked yourself how this is actually working. How do Pest knows that in this specific file, in this specific test, I'm actually using the Laravel test case behind it? So the reason why this is working is that once you install Pest in Laravel, it actually creates two files. One of them is the helpers file, and this one is just to create some functions that should be shared between the entire test suite. The second one is the most interesting one, which is the files which defines kind of the conventions of your test suite. So here I'm telling to Pest, hey Pest, please use this test case within the folder feature. So I'm telling you to Pest that every time you see a test inside of the feature folder, it should actually extend the Laravel test case. And that's why we have access to this API that you used to see that you used to see in Laravel feature tests, right? So it's pretty nice. Now let's use, for example, a more complex case. Let's try to roll back here into the closure test, and let's try, for example, use the database, right? So I'm going to tell Pest here it has users, for example, and I'm going to create a user using Laravel. And I'm going to create it right here, and I'm going to assert, for example, that database has that user. Okay. So the ID will be number 1. The example is very, very basic, but at least I'm going to tell you how can you use the database behind it. So I'm going to run my test suite, and as you can see, the error is, you might have seen this error before. So it's telling me that, hey, you are trying to interact with the database, but I mean, I'm having a query exception because there is no such table users yet. Now, this happens because just like in Laravel feature tests, you need to specify that this test is using the refresh database trait, right? So it's pretty, just like in Laravel feature PHP unit test, you need to define that this test uses the database as well. So the way you can do it is that, at least the way I would do that, is that I'm going to go to my Pest file right here, and I'm going to say, hey Pest, do use the test case and the refresh database class in the feature folder. And now I'm going to run my test suite, and as you can see, it works as expected. It has users. So yeah, there is also another way that you can do this if you want to specify per file, which is just do the uses here. I can do use refresh database class here, but I kind of like it having this file very, very simple and just specify that in my pest.php file. Okay. So let's complicate things in a little bit more. So let's create a new test in this file. So yeah, you can have multiple tests per file. One thing that you cannot do though is that having the same description. So here, for example, if I run Pest, it will tell me straight from the console, hey, that test already exists. That test with the description, it as users, already exists in that file name. So I have a pretty nice, I think Pest offers you pretty nice console exceptions directly to the user. Here, for example, you are not seeing a snippet. It's just straight feedback from the console. Is telling you directly that you cannot use the same description twice. So here I'm going to just tell Pest has users number 2, for example, and I'm going to run my test suite. And now it works as expected. But something that you might have seen here is that we are kind of creating a user before each test. So why not refactor this to our setup method? Because in PHP unit, something that you could do is that you could say, hey, before each test, let me configure this setup method that will be executed before each test. But in Pest, you can do it even more nicer, I would say. So you can just say, before each, do run the factory to create a user. And then you can remove the factory here and also the factory there. And everything will still work as expected. Pretty nice, right? Now, obviously, you can go crazy, and that's the way I like to use Pest. It's that I like to take it to the limit, so my test is very, very, very simple. So I'm going to remove the closure here, and I'm going to do high order tests, right? So it will look like this. And I mean, take a look at this file. It's so small, right? Writing a test like this in PHP unit with classes, namespaces, and all that thing would be like massive, right? So I'm gonna run my test suite here, and as you can see, it has users 2 and net users and have the first test as well. So it's working as expected. So yeah, I think for this talk I could go even more further. Oh, let me show you something actually. We also have coverage in Pest, a little bit more nicer than PHP unit again. So let me show you. So by default, obviously you can use the same options as PHP unit. Again, this is built on PHP unit, so you have all the options that you are used to use, but we offer you a pretty nice option for coverage. And the way that it works is that you just have to pass coverage here. And once you pass the option coverage, you will have this cov stats that telling you that 63% of the code is covered. And you also have this nice output that tells you which line is not covered, what is the percentage per file. So I think it's a very, very nice report straight from the console. I mean, it's straight from the console. It's not HTML or XML that you need to parse and understand. It's really built for humans. You have this straight from the console. You don't have to worry about anything else. So yeah, this is coverage in Pest. And yeah, I think for the demo we are good. So let's back to our slides. Now, Pest was released a few days ago, but we have so much more in the pipeline. I mean, I'm developing a plugin for Laravel that you will have all the assertions in Laravel that you like, but available globally. There is a plugin to do watch under development, a plugin to do snapshots that will be released soon as well, that allows you to use the Spatie snapshot package, but this time for Pest, educational content, videos, and way more. Everything is on the pipe. It should be everything tackled here in the next couple of weeks. Now, obviously, it's open source, it's free, available for everyone. You can get started today. The only thing you need to do is go to this website, call it pestphp.com. You can scan this QR code directly, and you will get there in that website. So go to pestphp.com, get started with Pests, and make your test suite very, very simple. It's very minimal. So yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I will be available for questions. So yeah, see you next time.
Do you want your online store to be ultra-fast, fully customized to your needs, and scalable to more than 1 billion items? Imios is an ultra-fast PHP e-commerce framework. Imios, next level e-commerce. Try it now.
If you're running an application at scale in public or private clouds, you have to tame almost boundless complexity. Datadog brings together all this observability data with infrastructure metrics, traces, and logs in one integrated platform.
Vonage is a cloud communication platform that lets you integrate voice, video, and messaging into your applications. We have a load of helper libraries, including a Laravel package and a client library for PHP. You can find out more about us at developer.nexmo.com.